Well, welcome to the Business Buzz. We have a lot to unpack right now. 9 News business expert Ryan Frazier is here with a closer look at what's making headlines. So let's dig right into it.
Lima, let's get going. The trucking industry in the U.S. is going to have a driver shortage pretty soon. The U.S. Transportation Secretary says they've pulled 9,500 truck drivers off the roads for failing to speak English. This action comes from a President Trump order in April to make sure all commercial truck drivers meet English proficiency requirements, or they will no longer drive. Truck drivers have had to meet those same requirements since the Obama administration, but violators were only issued citations and were not pulled from service. The Trump administration has pointed to deadly crashes caused by non-English speaking drivers for not only imposing this rule, but also limiting the licenses for non-U.S. citizens. When parents and college students fill out FAFSA, or the Federal Student Aid application, they can now find out a college's earnings data. That means it will show if graduates of a college you're looking at don't go on to earn much. The Department of Education says this new online database is about transparency and giving potential students the opportunity to compare schools based on earnings and not just cost and graduation rates. The world's richest man could soon be worth much more. According to a Bloomberg report, Elon Musk's space company, SpaceX, is considering one of the largest initial public offerings in history. The company could raise about $30 billion next year, with a valuation reaching as high as $1.5 trillion. Musk would not receive that money directly, but his nearly 50% stake could send his net worth soaring. Bloomberg estimates his fortune could more than double his current net worth of over $460 billion. SpaceX has not commented on the report. Colorado has even more space connections now that NASA has chosen a Golden-based company's lunar lander to collect data when astronauts land on the moon again. The lander from the company Lunar Outpost will help determine how humans on the moon impact the lunar surface. Researchers at CU Boulder will help with that work as well. As part of its Artemis program, NASA hopes to send astronauts back to the moon by 2027. But as of now, the Colorado-built lunar lander isn't scheduled to launch until 2028.
All right, definitely a lot
exciting.
going on. Yeah. I'm not going to lie, I'm still a little bit stuck on those trillions and billions of dollars right there. But
You're close. You're close.
I'm so close, so close. But let's talk about the future here a little bit more and CU's business outlook for next year. I mean, the end of the year, everybody's looking forward to this.
Yeah, yes, one topic that hasn't been discussed much, Shalima, is the high number of 65-year-olds and older who will be retiring. It will affect the number of jobs out there. The data is kind of startling if you think about it. 65,000 Coloradans turned 65 in 2024 alone. That is a massive demographic shift. Growth in 65 plus will impact our labor force participation with increasing retirements. In fact, the report estimates that over 40,000 people will retire every year for the next decade. For businesses, this is a wisdom shortage. We're losing some of our most experienced mentors in construction, aviation, and utilities faster than we can train the next generation to replace them. The report says, though, that because of this aging demographic, it will also drive increased demand for health services, as well as leisure and hospitality. So the workforce is getting older, and we're going to have to find ways to replace a lot of folks in the near future.
And how do you, go about replenishing that workforce in the time that we have? Because there's so little time to be able to do that.
I think, that's why we're continuing to see a lot of increased focus on workforce development here in Colorado, and for that matter, around the country, perhaps around the world. So more universities and industry coming together with obviously the state and the national governments to put resources into helping train those next workers, if you will, for the jobs of today and tomorrow. But it's a big deal. Colorado is seeing a massive demographic shift, and quite frankly, we have to figure that out going forward.
Yeah, definitely. You want to be able to spread that wisdom, right? Continue to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
And Native Coloradans, I want to delve into this next part. Native Coloradans have been pretty vocal. They've been saying the state doesn't need more transplants. And another part of that CU report shows that they just might be getting their wish.
Yeah, that's right. The report estimates that the population in the state will only grow 0.6% next year. That's 0.6%. I actually want to get your thoughts on this, Shalina, because you have a lot to say, I think. But the primary reason is net migration. That is the number of people that are moving to Colorado versus those who are leaving Colorado has slowed dramatically. And there are a lot of reasons behind that, right? High housing costs, affordability challenges, but also there's a big drop in international migration. Now, some of the other reasons behind population growth that's slowing as well is just fewer births as well. Now, the real issue, I think, is if young families can't afford to buy a home here, they stop coming. And so that 0.6% growth rate is some of the lowest we've seen since the 80s.
Wow.
Shalima. And it means our labor pool isn't growing fast enough to meet the demand. But you moved here from out of state, or for that matter, out of country. And,
Out of country, yeah.
I mean, how do you see it in terms of you guys decided to come here? So clearly we're not seeing zero growth.
No, and I think we had reasons too. I mean, for us, I think affordability, it's really relative to where you were before. And so I think maybe that's really why we're seeing so many people moving from some of the other states. We were talking about, California, New York, and then even from Canada. And we're talking about rates of taxation, for instance, where I'm from that don't exist here. I mean, we had a 13% harmonized sales tax. There was nothing harmonious about that, I will tell you that much. When you see that your final bill and 13% tacked on, it's a lot. But there were a lot of other things to consider, but costs, when we considered it relative to where we were from in Toronto, it ended up being less.
Yeah, well, and again, I think your point is spot on. It is relative, but even then, right, there are some states that are still a little more attractive in cost of living, like Florida, the Carolinas. We mentioned Texas, but you were even telling me offline that, for some folks, Texas is starting to get more expensive. So, maybe it won't be long before folks are no longer moving to Texas. But I think this affordability issue that we're experiencing throughout the nation, but I think it's exacerbated here in Colorado for a lot of folks. Like, if you can't afford to buy a home here, right?
Yeah.
You're either going to not come here, in many cases, or you're going to leave to somewhere where you can afford to buy a home. So I think these are all things that are ultimately slowing our growth. And we got to figure some things out here in Colorado because, quite frankly, we want to grow because more growth means more opportunity, more business, and more economics for everyone, I believe.
And there really is so much going on here. And I have to say, that's another really important thing, too. When you're factoring in any decision, it's a life decision, it's a business decision, but you're also thinking what's happening here. And Colorado just had a lot going on. But I mean, even to your point, you're talking about affordability and people getting into the housing market. But for so many people now, I know we've all had this discussion, do you really even need to own a house anymore, own property, or do you rent? What do you do, right?
That's a business buzz we got to take up in another show because that's a big question. I'm a proponent of home ownership. I think it's one of the greatest ways to build wealth long term. But that said, at this point, it's much cheaper to rent than to own. And that has some implications for people who are looking to save and invest as well.
Do those older philosophies and strategies and goals still stand up today? That is something we'll have to discuss in the future for sure. Well, thank you so much for watching. We'll be back at 11. Stay with us.